back to another episode of Bearded Wholesome and All Things Baltimore. I am the host, Matt Trigger. With me tonight is a very special guest. I'm starting a new series where I have some of our loyal talk some sports of their choice, whether it's baseball, football, college basketball, anything in between. My first guest for All Things Baltimore Sports fan segment is fellow Mount St. Joe alum and Super Orioles fan, Malarkey. What is going on, bud?
Matt, what's going on, brother? Appreciate you having me on tonight.
Hey, no problem, man. For those of you who don't know, Tim is one of my loyal followers and commenters and high up on the engagements for all of my shows the last 3.5 years. Tim and I went to high school together at Mount St. Joe. He's a little bit younger than me, but we cross paths periodically at school. Tim is a super Orioles fan. Tim, hey, we're just about a week away from opening day. We are 8 days from opening day down at Camden Yards, and it is going to be a little bit tight in terms of who the 26-man roster is going to be. Let's start off with the bullpen and the pitching side of things. We kind of have a feeling who's going to be in the rotation at this point. Tyler Wells has been solid all spring. Corbin Burns is obviously starting opening day. You have Bradish on the shelf right now, which we can get to in a little bit. Kramer, Means, even though Means isn't going to be ready at all. How do you think the rotation is going to shake out, come opening day?
First, I want to just say thanks for having me, Matt. A little interjection there. You've been at this for a little while now, and it's been pretty freaking cool to watch you grow and watch this, take off the way it has. And every day I tune in and you're like, I got this guy coming, and my eyebrows just get higher and higher. So it's been awesome to see you do this. But back to the good stuff. As you said, got opening day right around the corner. Rotation questions. Burns is obviously going to be, he's that one. He's, they've already announced him last week as the opening day guy. He's kind of what us Oriole fans who have stuck around through these last years have waited to see, the Orioles make a move for, and we did. So Burns is right there. And then I think coming in behind him at the 2 spot is going to be G-Rod. Grayson, I am very excited for. I actually have him on my list as who I think is going to be kind of like the pleasant surprise for a lot of Orioles fans this year. I know that, last year we kind of expected him to fall into that, and he had his hot times and he definitely had his slow times. And it's just, we've heard his name for 3 or 4 years now as kind of, that's going to be our guy. That's going to be our guy. And I really think based on what we're seeing in spring training that this is going to be that year where he fully becomes that guy, so to speak. So your 1-2 punch of Burns and G-Rod is going to be it. Now, this is where it gets a little sticky because, coming into this season, we had high hopes for Means to be ready to go. We didn't know about the Bradish injury until, 3 or 4 weeks ago. So you're going to have Wells, Irvin, and Kramer in that mix. As far as how they fall and what days of the series, I don't know. I really like what Wells is doing in spring training right now. He's kind of proving himself to be like, hey, I'm your number 3 guy right now. This is mine. And Irvin, although a letdown last year, has also been sort of surprising. And I think we know what we're going to get with Dean. So that's my 5: Burns, Grayson Rodriguez, Kramer, Wells, and Irvin. And then hopefully, knock on some wood, we see Means come off that elbow injury sooner than later. And then I kind of want to get your thoughts on this. With Bradish, UCL injury, we all know what that means. We'll see.
Bradish is done for the year. I'm gonna just go ahead and say that now, a week before the season starts. I don't care what anybody says about him resting, him throwing. We heard the same thing about Felix Bautista last year. Oh, he was okay. Oh, it was just a minor tear. It was just a minor, a medium strain. They've been kind of dodgy about a lot of their injury situations. It's the thing here in Baltimore sports. The leadership is always dodgy about injuries to the players. It's just how it's always been. I don't expect them to be fully transparent about it. I think they're going to try and ride this thing out. But if Bradish truly does need the Tommy John surgery, do it now so he at least has a chance to be ready come spring training of 2025. Yep. If he throws this year, I'll eat my words. If he pitches this year, I'll eat my words. But I truly believe that Bradish is out for the year, and they're just trying to delay the inevitable. I liked how you gave your thought process for the rotation. Grayson needs to really step up and be that guy because losing Bradish is going to be huge. And after Kramer, I don't have a whole lot of confidence that Wells can be a 33, 34 start kind of guy. I kind of envisioned him in the long role because I'm a Kramer fan. I think Kramer has the ability to be a back end starter for the Orioles. He had a very good record, even though he didn't always look the greatest consistently. I know he had like a 7 or 8 start stretch where he was, on fire. That's we can't expect, the league is going to catch up to us. We're not the surprise team that's coming around anymore. We have a very good roster that's going to be picked, in the next couple of days for this. And I believe that we should have done more to not necessarily, I'm not saying by making a trade about, for Cease or anything like that, but it would have been nice. But kicking the tires on Jordan Montgomery, seeing what he wants for a 2-3 year stretch would have been ideal for me. That's a guy that you can come in, and he's immediately going to be your number 2. And you could let him have an extend in the spring, kind of roll him to the 26-man roster come, the third week of April after he's kind of worked the kinks out. But I don't trust Irvin, even though he's looking good. The Irvin of spring training needs to be the same Irvin in the regular season, because there's times where he goes out there and looks like he can throw, 6-7 solid innings. And then there's other times where he's getting shelled after 1 1/3, so we don't need that. The rebuild is essentially over, Tim.
Right.
We talked about that all off camera. This rebuild kind of accelerated with that 83 win season, and then to follow that up with a 101 win season. I'm expecting a little bit of regression, but I'm not expecting a ton to where we should have the AL East ours.
On lock.
Tampa got weaker. Boston's in the cellar. Toronto they made no moves to get better in the off season. They kind of went all in on Shohei, then lost out, and then just kind of rested on their laurels a bit. But they still have a good baseball team. And the Yankees went out and they signed, or they traded for Juan Soto, and they still got Giancarlo and Judge and all those guys up there. Cole might miss the year, so I wouldn't be surprised if Blake Snell's a Yankee by the end of,
it's coming.
the month. It's definitely coming. I kind of like what the league is doing now, where they're icing out Boris Clients because he's been an albatross to the game for so long, in terms of player contracts. But we talked a little bit about the starting rotation, Tim, and I kind of like where you're at with it on your thought process with who you think is going to be in that starting 5. Let's get to the bullpen a little bit here.
I like what you said about Kramer.
Yes, he's on his best day he's our 3, and on his not so great days he's a 5/1 in the starting rotation, because he has to be at this point in time. There's no denying that.
Yeah, I mean, and fun fact, he pitched in 2023, he pitched the second most amount of innings of any Oriole. He came in at 171, just behind Kyle Gibson. So, I mean, his average was 254, being the second most, having the second most innings pitched on the team last year. So, I think he kind of, because he's not as flashy, people kind of tend to not give him, that first in line household name, but in that 3 spot, I think hopefully we can rely on him and that he delivers.
Yes. Which, leading into the bullpen side of the pitching aspect, we signed Craig Kimbrell. Most notably, the guy blew 2 saves against the Diamondbacks. A lot of people in Philadelphia aren't really his fan anymore, which doesn't really matter to us. I kind of figured we were going to go out and sign a closer or a back end of the bullpen guy because of Batista being out for the year. I don't see Batista pitching this year. He had surgery very, very late. So I like Cano in the back end, but I'm really not sure what else they're going to do in terms of that back end the back end of the bullpen. We're bringing back Perez. He's a bona fide veteran. Where do you see them going in terms of, the I guess the 8 for the bullpen?
So, yeah, what you said about Kimbrell is accurate. You get excited. He's that household name. He's that lights out closer. But I think the word that, we're just so hungry as Orioles fans to have someone that replaces the mountain. And, Kimbrell, I think the word is was. Now, is he the same guy that he, once was? Not sure about that. You can go look at Philly's Twitter and see. I guess we'll see. Definitely he was the move to replace Batista. And honestly, I mean, he might have been the best move that they could have made on what was available out there. As far as the back end, I mean, the bullpen, the 8, you're going to have Cano, like you said. Danny Coulomb, I like him. I think he's a good name. I trust him. He's solid. What's a little bit of a dagger with me, as you touched on this, is like with the Means and Bradish injury that bumped Wells up there, and Wells really would have been a good guy to have in that back end as a long reliever. And so, I mean, that's just something that we're missing now that Wells has to go up front and, be a starter. A guy that is in our bullpen and will probably be one of those 8 that I'm not really a fan of is Cionel Perez. I have seen in person and seen on TV. It just burns a little bit more when you're in person. It's just, he takes the mound and everyone kind of looks at each other and is like, it's a coin flip. It's yuck is what I have written down in my notes.
It definitely is. Name. And your better half chiming in, she says that she can't stand Perez either. So the Malarkey household is very much split on Perez, more so leaning towards this isn't good. A lot of people are going to say that I'm crazy for this. I was a huge proponent for bringing Fujinami back.
Yeah.
Because I went to the game in August last year where this was right before the Batista injury. And Fuji's coming in tossing gas, 102, 103, 101. And then you had Cano, high 90s, touching 100. And then Batista coming in touching damn near 104.
Right.
But the thing is, Fuji was hot one night, and then he would go get shelled the next time he was out there. So I understand, wanting to go with your guys that are younger, that you want to see what they got. I know this is going to sound a little bit crazy, but I want to see Povich in the bullpen.
Povich is one. I agree with you on that. I have him on my list. And then we already know this is a name that's been floating around for a while. Also, it's Keegan Aiken, and he has been having a delicious spring training. So
He has.
If
But let me allude to something that they said on the radio, though, Tim. And you and I both are very big 105.7 listeners. And that takes up the majority of our days, when we're traveling to and from our jobs and all that. But they have like some kind of infatuation with Aiken because, a couple years ago, Aiken looked like he was going to be one of the guys.
He did.
And then last year was just not his year. He was up and down all year long. And here we are now a week out, and he's probably going to make a bullpen spot like you're saying. I do agree with you, So, but the thing is who are you pitching against in the spring training? There's a lot of guys down there, and they still, there's a lot of non-roster invitees on all these teams, including our own.
Yep.
But what Aiken are you going to get when we get to the 162 game stretch? Because do we get 22 Aiken where we can rely on him, or are we going to get this Aiken where we're going to see him use another option and he's going to be up and down for half the summer?
Yeah, nope, I agree. I loop him in. I know this isn't a pitcher, but it's the same thing as Kyle Stowers almost for me, where it's like the name's been around for 2-3 years. It's been floating with being on the team, being down in the minors, being on the team. And it always seems like when it's go time and you would expect Aiken to be up and fill in a spot, he's not. And there's a reason behind that. So it has been great to see him doing this in spring training, but nothing counts in spring training. Doesn't count. And it's going to come down to where he at game 145, where he at game 150, down that final stretch is when it really matters. That's what, like, when I see some of these names on the list that worry me is, Dylan Tate's another name that's been floating around for years. Jacob Webb, is coming in that 8-9 spot, maybe, and it's iffy. And that in my head, I've played with the idea of, do we see the Orioles bring in some bullpen support? Because, I said that from the beginning before we had signed Corbin Burns. We need to go after a starter and we need to buffer the bullpen. We got our starter. Where's the bullpen move? Is it coming? And I think we have plenty of bait, some old chicken neck throwing the crab traps. We got plenty of that to toss in the water. It's, is the front office content? Are they going to do the whole, we like our guys, let's ride it out? Or are we going to, drop that crab trap in the water?
I agree with you. I firmly believe that unless somebody becomes available that is an absolute must grab, like, he will round out our bullpen. I don't see Elias doing that. Now, maybe come late May, early June, I can see him kind of starting to make some calls and see what's going on, out in the league. Maybe more towards the beginning of July when you can kind of see teams are already out of it. How are you going to go? Maybe you can go do some poaching, so to speak. But yeah, the bullpen is always going to worry me because it seems like the Orioles never put together a complete pitching team. You either have an out of this world bullpen or you have a fantastic starting rotation, but they never coincide the same year. On that last playoff run that we had with Andrew Miller, that bullpen was, if you had a lead after the 6th inning, you could pretty much chalk that right up there as a win.
Yep, the Darren O'Day days, man, I miss them.
Right, but the thing is, our starters were sketched during that time. Even though we won the division and we were making some noise, they were still sketchy. I mean, 1 through 5 was sketchy. Yep. And then last year, starting rotation had a relatively good year, and we get to the point where the bullpen is starting to look good, and then you have the Batista injury, and then you have guys just hitting that summer wall, and exhaustion set in, and it led to our eventual elimination by the reigning World Series champion Texas Rangers. But let's kind of switch over a little bit, Tim, to the bats. We have a lot of good problems to have at this juncture of spring training.
We got too many problems, Matt.
We do. I think right now we're seeing a lot of I guess false hope, I would say. Even though Stowers is hitting the cover off the ball, I'm still skeptical. I'm cautiously optimistic that he might have figured things out, but I think it's a little bit too late. If you see what's in front of him in the outfield, Mullins is not coming out of that lineup unless he's hurt.
No.
Santander is going to be in that lineup no matter what. Even though his defense, there's a lot to be desired. Leaves a lot to be desired. He's still a switch hitting power hitter, clubhouse leader right now. I'm not saying Santander is going to be here in 3 years. He might not even be here through the summer. But right now, he's that everyday right fielder. And then in left field, you got Austin Hayes, who I thought was going to get moved in one of these trades for an arm. He seemed like the most logical candidate, even though he might be our best defensive outfielder in the entire organization.
Yep.
Just in terms of how he plays that new left field, which is pretty much what Jason looking for. It gives me indigestion right now that I'm even referencing him. But
we don't say that name in this house.
Left field's like the second center field because of the angle, the depth, and he's got the arm strength for that, though, Tim. Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad. You have, Kobe Mayo, even though he plays the infield too. There's a lot of guys that are ready for everyday reps in this lineup, either in the corner outfield or as that fourth outfielder. Aaron Hicks is going to be difficult to replace, even though Aaron Hicks was a 1-year rental. I was an Aaron Hicks fan. You now have to replace that. You have to replace that pop off the bench. O'Hearn can play, right field a little bit. He's mostly a pinch hitter / DH / first baseman. To spell Mountcastle at this point. Where does Stowers fit in with all this? Because the guys that were behind him have now leapfrogged him in terms of pecking order at the major league level.
Yeah, so I'm with you. This is a weird conversation to be having as someone that's, been an Orioles fan for as long as you and I have. This is not something that we have ever been able to talk about. So it just doesn't feel right. But I mean, the matter of the fact, and it's pretty simple, is that, like you said, it's Hayes, Mullins, and Santander. They're not going anywhere. Hayes is like what I thought would be used as trade bait, and it's not necessarily too late for that. The problem is Cowser, Kjerstad, Stowers, and even McKenna. I think McKenna's out of the picture at this point, but you have two guys who are in the MLB top 100 pipeline. Cowser's number 19. Then you even have Kobe Mayo, who's number 30 in the pipeline in the mix. I mean, these guys are hitting the leather off the ball right now. And Kyle has sort of showed up late to the party, I guess you could say. 16 games, 37 at-bats, 9 runs, 11 hits, no doubles and triples. That stands out to me a lot because extra base hits are a big thing. I mean, he does have the 7 home runs, but we both know that 3 of them came in the same game last time. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Kyle is playing lights out right now, but just like you said, I think it's a lot too late, so to speak. I kind of see it shaking out as Cowser is a shoe-in. I don't think that they're going to stray away from that. Cowser is kind of stepped up and proven to be that spot. Kjerstad is where I kind of rely as that second outfield spot. So those are my 1-2s. Stowers and McKenna to me are just not. I mean, I just don't think there's room. Unless they use a Hayes Stowers combination to open up a roster spot, and then you can see a guaranteed spot for Kowser, Kjerstad. I mean, we have Kobe Mayo. We can't. It's unreal what we have knocking on the door. We just need room.
Yeah, it is unreal what we have knocking on the door, and I think that guys like Mountcastle should, Mountcastle, even though he's a fan favorite, everybody loves him. He goes by Mountie. He's a fan. He's a fan. He's a lovable guy to the fans. I love Mountcastle. I think that his job may be in jeopardy with Mayo, and they had Kjerstad taking reps at first base.
Yep.
Throughout the offseason, he took reps at first base last year in the minors. If they want to get a left-handed first base bat in there, if you don't want to go with O'Hearn and you want to use him as kind of like your all-around pinch hitter, there's that. And then a lot of people are forgetting that Mateo's having a good spring as well.
He is.
He's not having a fantastic spring, but at this point, I'm convinced that they don't want to let go of Mateo for the simple fact of his speed and the fact that he can pretty much play everywhere but first base and catcher.
He can, and
he's got the athletic ability to transition to 6 positions, which is incredible.
And that's the thing is, like you said, him being able to play all those positions. He's so fast that he only has to catch the ball half good to put him out in left field. He'll be able to track down anything. I mean, he can get to where he needs to go. I have him and Urias as sort of like chalked up as the 2 utility players that make the cut, just because they are your guys that you can float in to give anybody a break that needs it. I mean, Urias on the infield, Mateo infield and outfield. But yes, Mountcastle is in trouble. I mean, with Kobe Mayo, I love Mountcastle. Don't get me wrong. You see more Mountcastle jerseys in the yard than, I'd say it's top 3, top 4 jersey that you see. He's definitely a fan favorite. But with Kobe, I mean, he's played 19 games in spring training, 41 at bats. He has 15 hits, 7 doubles, a home run, 11 RBIs. But what stands out to me the most is him being this young and having 6 walks. I mean, he's got a 366 average right now, but the 6 walks is big because it means he's seeing the ball. And someone that young that is just waiting for a spot, that's seeing the ball this well right now, we know what Mountcastle can do. But I just think that, like you said, the rebuild is over. These guys are knocking at the door because we did this. Like this is the rebuild. And it burns, it stings, guys like Mountcastle and Hayes that have been there through all of this. It's going to have a little bit of it's going to have a sour effect to you just because, they're household names that you have watched endure this. But the truth of the reality is like, we want these young guys in there. We want them on the field. They're the ones that, we did this for.
Yeah. And the biggest thing to me is we sat through the heartache after 14. We saw the dismantling of the farm system under the previous regime. They hire Elias. They tell us to be patient. They go and make fantastic moves in the draft immediately with that Adley and Gunner and that draft and all that. Like you said, this is a situation now where you got to balance the team with some veterans, but you need to see what these young dudes are, because if you wait too long, you might fail to capitalize on their prime days. Because like we were talking about with Stowers a couple of minutes ago, Tim, now you're looking at the fact that we know what Mountcastle is at this point. Do you want to really risk putting Mayo down in the minors and him losing that fire and losing that energy that he has right now, where you break camp and you send him to Norfolk? Because let's just be real about it. AAA is where the guys that go that aren't ready, and you're not going to put Mayo back in Bowie. Right. He's past the stage in his career where he needs to be in Bowie every day. Right. Bowie is where you need guys like Enrique Bradfield and those type of players that are young. We just drafted a couple years ago. We have a loaded farm system, and I really wish they would make a trade like you alluded to earlier, Tim. Make a trade for a bullpen arm and get a couple of these guys out of here. Yep. I love them. They've been a part of this fantastic resurgence in Baltimore baseball, but you got to look at it this way. If you're not going to extend Cedric Mullins, what is the sense of holding up center field for Kowser? If you're not going to extend Austin Hayes, why are you holding up left field for somebody like Kjerstad or somebody like that? And then getting lost in all this is a power hitting outfielder that we drafted a couple years ago, Dylan Beavers. He's knocking on the door. He's AAA. He's probably AAA bound. He might start in Bowie, but he's a power hitting outfielder that we drafted relatively high. So you got to see what these guys are all about. This isn't a time to still keep these guys in the minors and sit on them and think you got all these eggs ready to hatch in a year or two. These guys are ready to play now.
Yeah.
And you gotta see what they're made of.
Yep. And it's not only are they ready to play now, there's guys behind them. You have Enrique Bradfield Jr. is sitting back there. I mean, Connor Norby is sitting back there. There's levels to it where there is just exceptional talent waiting, and I love them. Like you said, Mountcastle, Hayes. Are we going to extend Cedric? I love them. I got Cedric jersey sitting behind me. It's just I extend or we got to part ways. We just have to move on. We can't. It doesn't mean anything if we have the number one farm system in baseball. If the farm never makes it to the field, I don't care. And it's
because the farm system's a crapshoot for the most part.
Right.
How many of these guys are really going to be everyday major leaguers in Baltimore?
Yep. And
so go get bona fide bullpen talent.
Yeah. I mean, and you and I both know what happens when you take a young kid that's 20 years old and you introduce him to the majors. He plays 5 games. You drop him back down to the minors. A month goes by. You bring him back up.
Yeah. And I think the only 20-year-old we're going to see on this opening day roster is at second base, Jackson Holiday.
Yes, sir.
Now, I love Jackson. I think that he is going to be a bona fide superstar. Between Jackson, Adley, and Gunnar, our future is absolutely rock solid.
We got a factory breeding these guys somewhere.
Yeah, and it's like it's just like an assembly line. It's like, this crazy regime under Elias where we're churning out top prospects like it's cake at this point. I personally I think that we're going to be seeing Holiday as a starting second baseman opening day. If they put him in the minors, it's strictly for this service time clock bullshit that they got going on. Wipe that out the door.
I think
Jackson Holiday's ready for the major leagues. I don't care what anybody says. 9th or 8th or whatever it is, starting second baseman, give him number 7, just like his dad. I know that, Ripken wore it, he wore it years ago. Yeah, Ripken Sr. wore it years ago. If not, give him number 1, let him rock out like B-Rob did, but you got to get Holiday on this roster. Yeah. Jordan Westburg can hold down third. Even though if I'm playing, fantasy coach, fantasy GM, however you want to put it. If that's me, Gunner's your starting third baseman, Jackson's your starting shortstop, and you make Westburg your everyday second baseman. That's just me. They're all interchangeable at those 3 positions.
They are.
But Gunner's another Manny Machado. He's a Gold Glover at shortstop, and he's a Gold Glover at third base. So I don't care where they start because it's going to be fantastic defense. But anybody other than Holiday starting at second base, it's an absolute crime against humanity come March 28th.
I think it is too. I think that it would be asinine to not have that be what we see trot out there on Thursday. I mean, Matt, if I run this little quick stat line by you, it doesn't even make sense. You're telling me that this 20-year-old is not going to be your starting second baseman. He's played 13 games. That's it. Spring training right now, 13 games, 40 at-bats, 4 runs, 12 hits, 3 doubles, 2 triples, a home run, 5 RBIs. And in the 40 at-bats, he only has 14 strikeouts, average 300.
I'll take it. I'll take that all day long. And even if that if that translates to 270 in the majors,
right?
I'll take 270 batting in the 8-hole.
Yeah, of course. I mean, and I happen to remember a number 1 prospect by the name of Derek Jeter who came up rather early, and he had a hell of a first year. Now, on the contrary, I can't believe I'm bringing up 2 Yankees on this podcast, but whatever. A-Rod, youngin, came up. He did not have that first year that was to be expected, got sent back down. He still turned out to be a pretty good player. So, I mean,
he definitely did. And I'm anticipating him to make this opening day roster. It should be a foregone conclusion at this point. If they were to shut Jackson down and say, you're our second baseman opening day, and they didn't give him but maybe 3 or 4 more at bats and another maybe 3 or 4 innings in the field the next week, I would be okay with that, because now you got to kick this in the drive. All these other teams that we were drafted near the bottom with the last 5 years, they're putting their 19 and 20 and 21-year-old kids in the major leagues now. The Reds are doing it. The Pirates are doing it. The Blue Jays are doing it. Like, they're all doing it. And I believe that this is the time that you capitalize on that and say, not just for the fans to be, Oriole Park is going to be sold out like they are every single opening day. But to have Jackson Holliday in that lineup with Adley, with Gunnar, with Mullins, with Santander, he's going to be protected. He is definitely, and they're not going to hit him leadoff because that's Cedric.
Exactly.
And then, Adley is the best number 2 hitter in all of baseball.
Yep.
And then you got Santander, Gunnar, you got, Hayes, you got all these guys that you can throw in that 4, 5, 6 range. Just get this kid a goddamn Orioles jersey and let him be in that starting lineup. He's baseball, bloodline. This is in his blood right here. His dad's a World Series, champion, hell of a baseball player. Hell, his brother coming behind him might even be better than he is.
Yeah, I've seen some articles on him. It's remarkable.
This kid is a baller.
Yep.
Let's just stop wasting time and get him at second base. Now that, there's not really much to talk about in terms of who's going to be playing. We kind of touched on it already, where Gunnar's going to be batting 3 or 4. He's going to be either at short or third base every single day. I want to bring up something to you that even though it's not in the years, Samuel Basallo is all of a sudden knocking on the door as one of the top prospects in baseball. 18, 19 years old. He's a catcher. Now the question becomes, do you move Adley to first, or do you move Basallo to first, or do you platoon them and solidify first base by having Adley and Basallo in the years to come? That, I know that's way down the line. I know that we're talking about 2024 opening day on March 28th, but we didn't even talk about Basallo the first 39 minutes of this podcast.
Nope.
So I personally think that Adley's future is at first base.
Okay.
I love Adley, but I think the rule changes have severely affected his effectiveness throwing runners out.
That was the only thing that came to my mind when you said that, is his ability to get the ball to second.
Right. So maybe he was hurt. Maybe he had exhaustion, because the dude played a lot of games last year.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't miss any time due to injury. He got rest days on Sundays after a Saturday night game, which is
154 games.
Right. Yeah, 100. So they play 162, and that's not including the playoffs.
Right.
So he probably played 165 games last year.
Yep.
Which is a lot for a catcher. We saw Maurer make the transition to first. We saw Posey do it. I think Pudge might have made the transition late in his career. I don't believe that they're going to kill, his momentum as a top-notch player when they have the ability with Basallo and JLC. I'm not going to say his full name. I know that's taboo in your home. But he was talking about flipping Basallo for one of these frontline starters. And I'm glad that nobody really banged on the table for him, because that's providing insurance, because Adley's going to be he's already a rock star, but he's going to be one of the faces of baseball in Baltimore for the next 10, 15 years.
Yep.
I like the we have a lot of good problems right now, Tim. I can't say we have not been able to talk about that much because, like you and I have both talked about, it was 2012, 2014. The Buck era faded, and then we've been in this rebuild until 2022, where we won 83 games.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys on my 5 guys on my list right now that are in the top 100 in the pipeline, MLB pipeline. That, I mean, that's unheard of. It's just it's not like these are guys that are in the 80s or 90s. I mean, we have number 1, we have the number 17, we have number 19. Like, it's just it's a lot of good problems to have. It's just now it's kind of up to the front office, and sort of like how we always used to say with Ravens football, trust in Ozzie. It's kind of transitioned into the trust in Elias. I had a cool interaction with him. I didn't personally, but last season, it was like a random middle of the week game, and he's just out sitting in the stands by himself, about 7 rows behind home plate, fans on each side of him, not being bothered, and he's sitting there with a pencil and paper in his hand, keeping score. And it's refreshing to see someone that's that checked in. Now we have a new sheriff in town with a pocket full of money. It's time. It's go time. You got to clear room. You have to. I know it burns. I know it sucks, but it's that time. We have to make room for this talent, or use them other. I mean, like you said, we spent 40 minutes talking, and we didn't even mention Sam Basallo, the 17th in the pipeline, because we have Adley. It's like,
and we have, I think McCann's still on the team, so
he is.
So, and I love McCann. I think McCann's a fantastic catcher. Most of the games I went to last year, McCann caught. So it's like,
yep.
I mean, I just happened to go on like a Saturday or a Sunday most of the time, but.
And that's the thing with the Adley stat too, is like McCann did catch a lot of games last year, but Adley bat, he was there. That's why he was up 154 games, because he might not have been catching, but he was still in that lineup. Or still showed his face. So, and you can't count that against him. That's technically still playing. I mean, it might be a rest game if he gets 1 or 2 at bats, but still, he's up there swinging a bat as hard as he can.
Absolutely.
Not to mention the home run derby. We know what that does to your body. It's just,
and he was hitting absolute nukes in Safeco last year.
I was jumping. I almost jumped through the floor when he switched hands and just started letting them crank, like the first 8 in a row when he switched hands. Oh man, it was.
And that's Adley country up there. He's a Pacific Northwest kid. So, I'm gonna put you on the spot, Tim.
Okay.
You're a hider right now. What is your 1 through 9 on the 28th?
1 through 9. Oh boy.
I saw your cheat sheet, and I know you had your notes, but I want you. This is where I'm testing your mettle a little bit, brother.
No, I got you. Man, 1 through 9. I'm gonna go 1, Cedric Mullins. 2, I will go Mountcastle.
You think
3.
You think Mountcastle's going to bat too over Adley?
I think to start. I think just to start the season, because I was looking at the 2023 first 3 weeks, and Mountcastle tends to have this weird. He did it in 2022 where he is hot. He's red hot to start the year. So I'm kind of banking on that. I mean, I float him anywhere between 2, 3, and 4, but I'm going to stick with what my brain was telling me. I'm going to go Cedric, Mountcastle, Adley, Gunnar. This is where it gets tricky. I mean, because I could interchange Gunnar and Santander anytime there in the 4-5. We'll stick with Gunnar. We'll go Santander. Then we'll go Hayes. And I think your back end is going to be Westberg and Jackson.
Okay. And I appreciate that. I'm going to give you mine just so I don't, you're not the only one on the spot. I believe Mullins is our leadoff guy.
Yep.
Number 2, I believe it's going to be Adley. 3 is going to be Gunnar. We're going to see Mountie cleaning up.
Okay.
5 is going to be Santander. 6 will be Austin Hayes. 7 will be Westberg. 8 will be Jackson Holiday. And I believe 9 will be potentially Kerstedt in right field.
Yeah.
So I think that might be our 1 through 9, because I think Santander is going to open the season as the DH.
That last spot, Kerstedt and Kauser, I float in between on too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I'm totally with you. This is going to be a challenging year for us in terms of keeping around that 97 to 99 wins. I've seen the number 93, 94 floated out there. I don't think we're going to have almost a 10-game regression, but I do seeing it be maybe a 3 to 4 game regression in terms of overall wins. A lot of things went our way last year. There was a lot of injuries to a lot of teams in the East. Tampa Bay had an absolute complete meltdown in terms of what went on with Franco. So we don't have to really get into that on the show. But needless to say, they also jettisoned a lot of their good players to Los Angeles, where Los Angeles is playing with fake money. It seems like
it's monopoly money at this point out there.
Oh, it really is. It really is. I wanted to bring up something to you, and I know this doesn't have to do with the Orioles per se. My brother brought it up in a group chat. Let me see if I can find the picture. The 2024 San Diego Padres starting lineup features 7 former shortstops at other positions, and it's crazy. Bogarts is at second. He's a former shortstop. Tatis is a former shortstop. He's now their everyday right fielder. Cronenworth is a former shortstop. He's their first baseman. Machado is their starting DH, and he's a former shortstop. They got the dude Kim, that's their current shortstop. And then Profar and Merrill are both former shortstops manning center field and left field. It's just a crazy stat how almost every position player played shortstop somewhere else or within the organization before they got to the majors in San Diego.
Yeah.
And it's wild that Machado is not playing third base.
That is a wild stat. And what even sticks out to me the most there is I'll say a prayer for their manager tonight, because man, they have some attitudes in that clubhouse.
Yes, they do.
There are some big names on that list with big personalities. So yeah, I mean, I don't have any shade on to throw on the Padres. I mean, I was indifferent about the Manny Machado thing because I think that's all we had to hold on to at the time, other than Chris Davis, who we still pay money to, and we will pay money to for a very long time. But I mean, this year, Matt, I'm hoping to relive the feeling I got when Delman Young hit that little doinker into this, dropped it in, and I heard that yard go nuts because I was at the postseason last year and it was rather deflating. So with all of this hype, all this build up, looking at all this,
I remember where I was for that Delman Young hit. I was out at Green Turtle with a couple of my friends and we were having dinner, and I remember that hit, and the entire place went wild. We were up in the one in Hunt Valley, and that's one of my more fond memories is seeing that Delman Young hit. And I was just kind of looking at the lineup we got now and the team we got now. This is, I don't want to put no omen out there, but this is kind of shades of the 96-97 squad.
It is
bona fide all-stars at almost every single infield position. And then youngsters that are, ready to hit the cover off the ball. I hope that this can be a full-fledged, complete baseball team. My biggest worry is the bullpen, and I'm not saying that because Batista is out. I'm saying that because we alluded to it earlier. before the injury to Bradish, and like I said in the first 5 minutes of this show, Tim, I don't believe Bradish is going to play this year. I believe that we're going to get an alert on our phone on like a random Wednesday at 3:00, right before the Orioles play a 7:05 game or a 6:05 game, and then it's going to say Kyle Bradish to undergo UCL surgery.
Tommy John time.
So I don't see it. I don't see him pitching this year. I love Bradish, but I want to ask you. I know that there's more parity in the league now. There's not necessarily an emphasis on divisional games because we've gone down from I believe playing our division rivals from 19 times each to like 13 or 14 times each to kind of play amongst the league more often. What do you see the Orioles record being this year? You don't have to give a prediction for a World Series or the playoffs or anything like that. Hopefully you'll come back on and we can kind of touch on this more as the season progresses, Tim. But what is your early outset for the Orioles 2024 record?
So I'm not saying this because of you thinking that we're going to regress. I have this written down on multiple sites. You can check the receipts. I've posted it online on Twitter and comment sections and wherever people are asking for predictions. I look back at the 2023 team and I think that we are a better team this year. And then I like to compare it to where I think our division sits first, because we play every team in the league, but our division, we play more. And those are the games that, are really what separates your record when it comes down to it, or your games in your division, because teams get familiar. The Rays did have that atrocious fall off at the end of the year last year, but to start the year, they were red hot. It felt like we were chasing them. And that makes me think two things is, do the Ravens need, I got a cat visitor. Do the Ravens need somebody, Ravens, do the Orioles need somebody to chase, so to speak? Like, were we as hot as we got and stayed that hot because we felt like we were trailing? We were trying to catch that number one spot, or are we just a better team this year and we're going to play to the top? So after I, throw all of those in, shout out to Tim Barbalace in the, I can say this because, Tim over here too, throw that all in the simulator here. I'm actually going to go with an increase, 103 wins. I think that we stay hot, we start hot. And I think that the feeling in the clubhouse is that this is it. Like, we did this rebuild. Now's the time. I think that it's not necessarily a do or die feeling in the clubhouse. I think it's that we're going to do this for the next 3 years feeling in the clubhouse. Matt, I like to do this weird thing where I draw a diamond and I write the names down and I play with it and I look at the diamond. If you can tell me that, 60 games into this season, 80 games into this season, I'm going to be looking at Westberg at third base, Gunnar Henderson at shortstop, Jackson Holliday at second base, Kobe Mayo at first base, Adley catching, Corbin Burns starting, and then you have all this speed out in the outfield. Like, I can't do anything shy of 100, and I like the number 3, so I'm going 103 wins.
Fair enough. Your significant other, Stephanie, who's been an absolute beast on the comment thread tonight. She's saying 110 wins. Let's just post this comment.
She's going lights out.
Right here. Oh, I like it. I like her confidence. I love the absolute confidence that she is displaying for the Orioles this year. I do want to ask you about something that we talked about, throughout the course of the last couple of days, lining up this show. You are one of the old school baseball fans where you go to the game and you keep score on an actual scorecard. How did that start?
It was kind of just, probably could have been something from my parents to try and keep me to sit still in my seat back in the day. I don't really know where it came from. I think it just because we were so bad, Matt, that sometimes it was, hard to watch, and it I would tear through a $8 bag of peanuts in 2 innings and then sit there and have nothing else to do except watch us be miserable. So, I mean, I'm 33 years old. This has been a long time coming. I don't know anything different. So, I think that's where it started, just being a goofball and, staying occupied, and if no one's ever tried it, I'm not saying you have to, go out there and do it, or you even have to get a scorecard. Take a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen with you. Do it once to one game you go to this year. And I think that you will not only see how challenging it can be sometimes, but how much more of the game you notice, how much more of the game you take in. You start to realize, you start to pick up on what kind of pitches are coming in. You start catching yourself looking out over in left field and seeing if it was a fastball, seeing if it was a curveball. You start recognizing numbers and saying, Corbin's got 5 pitches and then Hyde's coming out to take him. You know what I mean? And it's something that, if you just go there and drink beer and, have a good time, which I'm not knocking that. I have plenty of those moments as well, is that it makes you appreciate the game a little bit. And if I can recommend it, take a Post-it note and someone and pick 1 or 2 things just to keep score of, strikes and balls. And you'd be surprised how much more of the game you pick up on. And you also get a couple cool looks from the people around you. Like, is that guy really over there with a pen and paper in his hand?
It's like old man shit, but yep. I do want to, it's linear, even though it's not the exact same. When I go to any Baltimore sport games, Ravens or Orioles, watching the game now has changed for me the last 3 years doing this show. And having to pay attention to some smaller details, to some things that might add substance to what I want to talk about on air. And being as though that I've brought on former Orioles and former Ravens on my show over the last 3 years, you got to know what you're talking about with them. So it's definitely one of those things where you gotta pay attention to a lot. So that's why, I mean, I don't drink. So when I'm at these games, I'm like locked in. I'll have a conversation with the guys I'm with, or, I took Aubrey to her first game a couple of years ago, and, it's fun to explain baseball to her and, walk around the stadium and all that. But when I'm sitting there, I'm locked in. It's a different kind of feel. So I relate to what you're saying, where you're filling out every scorecard and you're making sure that it matches what you're looking at on that scoreboard and pitch counts, and then you can kind of anticipate what they may be doing, but based on who you see up in the bullpen.
Yep. And it's just, I mean, it's like anything in your life that you practice and that you do over and over again. With just something small like that, you start small and you realize how much it affects what you retain, which you get in the car and you're not like, oh, that was a blowout, that was a good game. You're getting in the car and been like, man, Hyde should have walked out there 7 pitches earlier. He fell off. He was under 90 the last 6 balls that he threw, and then you're like, wait, why do I even know that? And it's just, it for me, it makes it, makes it fun.
Absolutely. To round off the show, we've been going an hour strong, Tim. Let's kind of give shock value here. What is your one big prediction for the Orioles? Do they add somebody? Do they make a major trade? Does somebody have a monster year that nobody else in Birdland is expecting? What?
My hot take.
It can be a hot take. It can be a bold prediction. It can be anything of the sort.
Well, I would like to say that I see some kind of blockbuster trade come in. But my problem when I think about that more and more is that I don't really see any blockbuster, so to speak, that's out there right now that's not going to get gobbled up by anybody else. So I'm going to go with this, and this might not surprise you. It might not surprise a lot of people. But it technically could be considered, something sort of wild, is that I think that we see Jackson Holliday trot out there on opening day wearing number 7 for the first time someone other than a Ripken has worn that number in 33 years. And I think we see a repeat of a rookie being the 2024 MVP in Jackson Holiday. I think we had Gunnar last year. I think it's going to be Holiday this year. And that might not surprise anybody, but it should. The kid's 20 years old, and I think he has the potential to be the 2024 Orioles MVP.
There you go. I'm going to match energy with my prediction, so to speak, and I believe this is the year where you see Gunnar hit 310 with 43 home runs and over 100 RBIs. I think he goes absolutely nuts this year. Short porch in right field. Dude can hit for power anywhere in the field as it is, but I believe Gunnar is a 310, 43, and at least 105 in the ribby department while playing Gold Glove caliber defense.
Matt, I hope you are right. If he breaks 40, I'll take you to a steak dinner on me. I got you, because I will.
I'm an expensive date. Ask my wife. She took me out for steak the other night.
I will pay to see that. I would love it. I would be more than happy to see that happen.
You remember this is live and this is recorded too.
Oh,
so I'm gonna play this back to you.
You can hold me to it. I want to see that 40 from Gunnar. It would seriously just. I mean, I think I don't speak for, I think I speak for everyone, especially people that have been around through the thick and thin of this Orioles franchise over the last 30 years, is that it would make me really happy to see a guy go from being the 2023 MVP, coming off the hottest rookie season we've seen in a long time, and then smashing 40 plus. Oh man, it would be a great thing.
Yes, it would. That'll do it for the show, Tim. Thank you so much. This is the first time I've had a fan on, and you have a bevy of Orioles knowledge. It is fun talking ball with you, man. We have a lot of good conversations in our text messages and in our messenger chats. I was looking forward to this. You did not disappoint. You definitely delivered to our listeners watching. Do want to let you know this on air, and while we're still live, this is the most people that have ever tuned into a live sports related show that I've had on all things Baltimore sports to date. We are at 74 live watchers, and that's just on Facebook. So awesome. It doesn't show the metrics for Twitter or anything else, but your knowledge definitely, brought packed a punch to the show, and I'll let everybody know where they can follow you along, man, because you're definitely going to be back.
I gotcha. So I mean, I'm on the socials a lot. This is, as Matt said, new to me. I expressed to Matt, this is something that I've always wanted to do, but never really decided to take the venture myself. So if Matt invites me back, we'll talk some ball. I'll be here. You can find me. Facebook name is what it is, Tim Malarkey. Instagram is Mr._Malarkey. And then on the X, Twitter, as us old heads like to call it still, it is T_Malarkey. Posting Orioles and Ravens content, music content all day. You'll find me.
There you go, Tim. Stick around for post-show. That is a wrap, folks. Thank you for tuning in to episode 13 of season 5. We'll be back later this week with another episode.